Children, in our last class, I have told you about the life history of Nelson Mandela and also about the inauguration ceremony that was supposed to take place in South Africa. It was on 10th May, the day of oath with a bright and shiny sun. Nelson Mandela was supposed to take oath as the first black president of South Africa. A large number of leaders from all around the world had gathered there to be the witness of the swearing-in ceremony of Nelson Mandela as the first black president. The inauguration ceremony took place in a big open building in Pretoria, where the first democratic non-racial government was to be installed. On that day, Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani. Mr. de Klerk was the first person who took oath as second deputy president, followed by Mr. Thabo Mbeki, who sweared as the first deputy president of South Africa. Nelson Mandela sweared as the first black president of South Africa. He pledged to obey and uphold the constitution and to devote himself to the well-being of the people. He also promised to make the nation free from poverty, deprivation, suffering, and all sorts of discrimination. Let's read from the current page. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Ghose Sikalal, Africa, and blacks singing Deistem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Here we have the explanation. When Mandela had taken oath, South African jets displayed the military power. It also showed the loyalty of military to democracy. The highest military general saluted him. He recounted that they would have arrested him many years before. It was followed by the playing of two national anthems. The whites sang Ghose Sikalal, the old song, and the blacks sang Deistem, the new song, which marked the end of the ceremony. Let's move to the last stanza of the same page. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century, and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of the color of their skin. Here is explanation. Nelson Mandela remembers about days gone by, which will soon be the part of history where the whites had formed a system of racial dominance against the blacks. It was the basis of the harsh societies which is now overturned. He says that the policy of apartheid, which means policy of racial segregation, created a deep and lasting wound on his country and its people. Now, it is the system that recognized the rights and freedom of all people. Next page. That day had come out about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them, and they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sissulas, the Chief Luthulis, the Yusuf Dadurs, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobuks of our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have known that the greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. On that auspicious day, Mandela regretted the loss of thousands of people and remembered their sacrifices for the freedom from discrimination. He thought of himself as the sum of all those African patriots who sacrificed their lives before him. He was pained that he could not thank them. He recalled great freedom fighters like Oliver Tambos, Walter Sisulu, Chief Luthuli, Yusuf Dadu, etc., who were the men of uncommon courage, wisdom and generosity. He said that the country is rich in minerals, but its greatest wealth is its people. Let's continue reading. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again I have seen men and women risk, and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second. But it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can never be hidden, but never extinguished. The author says that being white or black is not the token of your goodness or superiority. No one is born hating other. People should love one another, which comes without force, as it is natural. It is man's essential goodness.